Well, today's topic may sound like a silly question. What does it mean to be porn-free? Well, Vern, let me think about it. Maybe it means to be porn-free. I don't get the question. Well, actually, it isn't that simple. And as I work with guys, I find their definition of porn-free changes significantly over time. We'll get into that after the break. Welcome aboard.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, I want to encourage you, if you are a new listener or you've been listening for a while, to sign up for Circle. It's a great way to get access to a whole chunk of free resources to help you in your recovery journey. And there's information on Circle for a whole bunch of documents, a whole bunch of different planning tools. And the way you sign up is in the show notes and the specific steps that you use to do that. You can do it on your smart device, your cell phone, or you can do it on just a laptop or an iPad, whatever that is. So also on Circle is a whole bunch of information on the Finding Traction course. You can watch the first 2 lessons for free on Circle, plus information on how to get all 52 lessons, or even better yet, join a group of motivated guys that will journey together through the material. If you have any questions or you want to connect with me on a free Zoom call, you can email me at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. Okay, so let's get back to our question. What does it mean to be porn-free? And what does a guy mean when he says, I would like to be porn-free? Well, those are slightly different questions. So let's start with that first one. When someone says, I would like to be porn-free. And it's important to separate out the difference between awareness and readiness. I had a young guy recently describe a conversation he had with his buddies. And the subject of porn came up and they were just shooting the breeze. And every one of the guys said that they watch porn too much and they wanted to stop. What this guy said, though, is he talked with them and they discussed this idea of awareness. He realized that for most of them, this idea of wanting to stop porn was what we could call an aspirational goal, something that they wished was the case. But almost to a man, they weren't ready and certainly weren't about to take any real steps of change to put that aspiration into motion. So we want to separate out whether or not they just are, like the idea of being porn-free, or actually want to take some steps toward being porn-free. But now let's say somebody says, no, I really do want to be porn-free, and I really do want to take some steps towards that. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. Well, what does it actually mean to be porn-free? I like asking guys that question, because we've got to stop somewhere, right? I heard, there was a saying, you can't defeat what you don't define. And yes, at first, it often seems pretty simple. Well, Vern, I want to stop looking at porn. Okay, so what do you mean by that? Well, usually at the beginning, it's just some version of soft or hardcore porn with lots of nudity and or people having sex. It could be straight porn, gay porn, or both. Sometimes it's more extreme versions and variations, but it's definitely something that fits in the broad definition of porn. They feel shame about, they have negative feelings about it, and it's having some sort of negative effect on their life. Now, we don't get into all sorts of details as to the type of porn they're looking at, but that's usually some version of what they mean when they say they want to be porn-free. But here's what's interesting. Over time, these definitions, though, begin to be challenged, and further clarification is important. One little acronym or idea, PMO, that means porn, masturbation, and orgasm. They're often described PMO because they often go together, of course. But that definition sometimes runs into problems because, well, what if I look at porn, but I don't masturbate to orgasm? I think they call that gooning. Or just I masturbate, but I don't have an orgasm. Is that okay? Because I heard somewhere that orgasm is where all the brain connections are wired together. So if I don't orgasm, maybe it's okay. But often guys will find trying to separate out P and M and O often proves to be pretty unworkable and ineffective in their recovery, because eventually P becomes P and M become P, M, and O over time, if you know what I mean. Well, how about just the M and the O, so masturbation and orgasm, without the P? This sounds like an alphabet game here, right? In other words, masturbation without porn. Well, leaving out moral or spiritual questions surrounding that, usually as guys get started down this road, they find that that also proves to be unworkable, because for them, masturbation has been so often paired with porn and their arousal cycle that eventually masturbation just leads them back to the full meal deal, PMO. There's an internet slang word, nofap, which is about the same thing. Guys realizing that for them, masturbation is invariably linked with porn, and to separate them out turns to be experientially unworkable and ineffective. So now, guys that just wanted to be porn-free are finding themselves wrestling with having to expand their definition. Now, this experience proves to be rather, what word am I looking for? Something that carries through their recovery journey. Having to expand their definition or finding their present definition is unworkable, they are often faced with more than once in this porn-free journey. Let me give you an example. One of the biggest and most difficult or even mind-bending lessons for our new guys is Lesson 5 in the Finding Traction course. And Lesson 5 is entitled this: Edging is not your friend. And often guys will say, I started this journey wanting to stop looking at porn, but now you are saying that even though I may not be looking at porn technically, I am still engaging in all sorts of arousal activities that are just as unworkable and unhelpful as when I was looking at porn. And now they start catching themselves when they check in group, for example, and when they say things like, well, technically, or technically I didn't look at porn, but they start realizing, you know what? This is not sobriety. This is not recovery for me. And we call a relapse red, and they say, well, you might as well paint me red because, yeah, I didn't look at porn, but I engaged significantly or a long period of time with social media in exactly the same way. Checking out models, looking for titillating videos that give me that same dopamine rush. Sure, I'm not looking at porn, but I guess edging is pretty much the same. Why? Because it really has the same effect on me. I may be porn free, but I'm not recovering from my dependence on this whole sexual arousal cycle. So now, what was a simple definition of porn free is expanded. And they begin to realize, you know what, there's other things which are standing in the way of having the life and relationships I want. So that, for example, is lesson 5. And then just because that takes, a long time to really begin to wrestle with, and guys have different levels of wrestling with that. And because oftentimes we don't want to expand our definition, and we don't want to do that because it may mean giving something up, or this has been our friend. And so oftentimes guys will experience resistance points in their recovery journey. And so we hold off on another tough lesson. And I think in quarter 3, we raise perhaps one of the toughest lessons of all, and that is the entire way that we interact with women. And we begin to unpackage what is a pornographic mindset. A mindset where you're continually checking women out, rating women, deciding where they are on your porn-worthy scale, seeing them as a collection of body parts and as a sexual product rather than a person, consuming them. And we then go from that to unpackaging what we call a pornographic style of relating, where for some guys, they're just avoiding women and not building real relationships with them, or they're just consuming women because that's just the way they've always seen women and dealt with women. By this time you might be going, stop, no more. I just wanted to be porn free, and you're making this way more confusing and difficult. Well, let me just say in summary, this porn-free life is not a static, fixed thing. You may have heard of the statement, this whole recovery journey is in very much a journey. It may be like a marathon. And as guys get into it, they realize what they thought was simple, I just don't want to look at porn, is a whole learning journey around self-awareness. We find ourselves growing in one area, taking real steps of growth and health, and then we may come face to face with a new aspect of our brokenness and dysfunction. And then, with the help of God and the support of other men, we begin to deal with that. We begin to face that. And we begin to experience new ways of life, healthier ways of life, and the freedom that comes with that. So when someone says to you, hey, I want to be porn free, take them where they're at and then walk with them and journey with them into an expanding experience of what that means and the freedom it offers. It's exactly the same journey that we have to go through. We'll see you next time.